Hey, everybody, this is So Many Sequels. I'm Josh.
I'm Andrew.
I'm Garrett.
And I'm David in
Yeah.
bass.
Ooh, I like that.
Ooh.
Ooh, that beefy bass, David.
Yes, with the bass boosted, David.
Bringing it in low.
Narrate us to sleep, Daddy.
All right.
So you got to give the people what they want.
Give the people what they want. You just need to read, do some audiobooks right now. Record some
I need
audiobooks.
to go. Hey, please stop down there. Sorry. He's already here. Say hello, everybody.
Oh,
Hello, everybody.
Hello, video watchers that might now be on Spotify as well, right?
You know, they're experimenting with all kinds of weird stuff. You might see one of our recent episodes if you listen on Spotify. It might give you a video. That's pretty cool.
Who doesn't want to see these four faces? As often as possible. And five.
Okay.
I don't think there's anyone who doesn't want to see us. Which is why we're here this week to talk about another new movie. If you've been following the show, you know, typically you'll know that we just finished up our our Halloween series.
That's true.
Which was fun. And now we're back into normal, regularly scheduled programming with a review of Marvel's Eternals. This, like most new movies we've reviewed this year, was a victim of the pandemic in that it was delayed mightily, but it's finally out now. This is the third Marvel movie we've gotten this year after Black Widow and Shang-Chi. So very exciting time period for Marvel fans, I think. Eternals is a new set of characters when it comes to the film universe. And I my understanding is they're quite the deep cut from the comics as well. So a lot of casual fans may not know about them. I sure didn't. So this is branching out into new territory once again. A lot of big stars in this movie. Obviously, Angelina Jolie, a huge kind of classic movie star. She's been a movie star for a long time.
Yep.
And then you've got others like Camille Nanjiani, Brian Tyree Henry, Kit Harington from Game of Thrones fame. Yeah, Salma Hayek. Directed by Chloe Zhao, who recently directed the Academy Award-winning Nomadland. So a lot going into this. Who wants to start was given some first impressions of how you felt about Eternals.
So I didn't really care for it.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
I didn't really care for it. And the reason why is because it almost felt a little bit too bland. I don't know why. The story was just kind of bland. And it's like, given that we have the Avengers, and given that we have, this the Avengers take on things, like especially within the MCU, I feel like this is almost another Avengers rehash. And my problem with it is that it's just like it's like to the point where it's just not surprising anymore. Yeah, there were twists in it. There were things that caught my attention. There were things that there were some funny parts in it. But overall, I just thought that this was just kind of weak. It was just kind of meh. Like, it's fine. It's not a bad movie, but just kind of meh.
Okay. First impression from Andrew. Starting out, meh.
Meh. I'll go second. I just saw it yesterday. And, nice. I thought it was fairly thoughtful. For especially for what you think about in terms of Marvel movies. There was a lot of it was very high concept in a lot of ways. There's a lot of different ideas being thrown about. There's a lot of different storylines. You got 10 main characters or 10 featured characters in the movie, and so they found the best way I think they could to sort of give everybody a little bit of time to shine. It's kind of different than, say, in Avengers: Infinity War, Endgame, where you got 2.5 hours and you got like 50 characters. And, a lot of people walked out going, after Infinity War going like, man, that character was barely in it. Oh, this character was barely that character. I feel like everybody got a moment or two to shine in this. it was kind of I would say more slowly paced in a lot of ways than your traditional Marvel movie, and that might be from getting someone like Chloe Zhao, who's this isn't the first time they've got an Academy Award winning director or a more artistic director to come in for a Marvel movie, but I kind of thought that this was along the lines of a bit more artsy of a Marvel movie and didn't really have the same snap that I think you get from other films. Whereas in the past, directors like a Taika Waititi or I'm trying to even think of who's right, a Ryan Coogler come in, and they really seem to play well to the action component. This one really didn't. It's like they didn't care too much about the action aspect. But I thought that, it was, I thought that the performances were all fine. I thought it was bland on color. But I thought that for the most part, is visually very interesting at times. I liked a lot of the effects. I love the idea of like an immortal group of people sort of living through time. I think that they explored that. They could have explored that in better ways, I think. Sure. But yeah, I would say that it was different. It wasn't quite what you expect, and I'm not sure where exactly I land on it overall.
That's the way that I felt until recently, I think, where I think I've talked myself into thinking that it is a good start, right? Like, yeah, everything that I see for the most part it depends on who I read from, but a lot of it says that it doesn't feel like a Marvel movie. And I definitely agree with that. And I think that the problem that I initially had was that there are so many, and because it is such a deep cut, and they set it up differently than normal. It's character building. Like, you're being introduced to the backstory of these people because we don't know, right? And the more that I think about it, I kind of look at all of the things that it has potential for, to where I feel like we could look at it in the future as very similar to Age of Ultron, where Age of Ultron, not a great movie, but it does set up a lot. And we're kind of, if you look at where we're moving with Marvel, is there's I don't think they're pivoting away from Avengers, but like those characters haven't done anything in a while since Endgame. They're kind of going away. So they're setting up various different things. It's not just going to be Avengers. And I think they're trying to set up two different things that can come back together. And so this can be for a different audience, but they lay down, hints for Blade. They lay down a whole lot of expansive stuff in this movie. And I think we're going to get more of these characters in other movies as we go out. Cause I've also been trying to think, is like, how are they going to keep this going? Because the Eternals as a group seems like it only makes sense together, and they only are needed whenever this big celestial being or whatever is being birthed. That's essentially when they come out. And so you don't need them. And now that this seems to be over, you've got the one that's going around, but I think you'll see them pop up in other people's movies and be characters leading up to them, kind of tying it that way. And I also feel like this movie feels differently because these characters are different. They remind me a lot of DC characters because they are very godlike.
Yes.
Whereas most Marvel characters have a connectability to real characters, even Thor. You look at how Thor has evolved. You go back and look at the early Thor movies, and those aren't necessarily people's favorites. And it feels different because he is a god, and now he's more of a regular guy. But these characters, again, are very godlike. Icarus is basically Superman, and they have that same kind of setup and feeling that you get from watching a Justice League. And I think that is also why it may feel different. So I think they did a lot of different things. I'm super intrigued by the character work that they did. The story itself, not necessarily my favorite, but I think there's a lot of potential. And that's what I'm looking forward to. So I'm looking forward to it. I don't necessarily think this is one of their strongest ones, but I think it has a potential to be a good web laying for the future.
Yeah, I agree with that because I think about the middle of the movie. I was my first reaction really was this is the most DC MCU movie ever. It feels a lot like DC. I don't know why. It's got that DC feel to it. And I don't think
it's the blandness, I think.
It's the blandness. And I think that's where that comes in. It's not, I don't think it's Chloe Zhao's fault, but anyway, sorry.
Yeah, I can't stray too far from a lot of these opinions, and it makes sense considering that this has been a very mixed review type movie. It is the first and only Marvel movie that has a rotten score on Rotten Tomatoes, with a lot of common themes being that it is ambitious but falls flat, that it's a bit boring, but that also it is very long and yet somehow seems to contain a lot of exposition, to the point where it almost feels rushed at times. Those are just some of the quick takes that I was reading in reviews. And I think it makes a lot of sense. There's probably too many Eternals. There's probably too many characters for a single movie to lift them all up for a team. I don't know. I'm not a movie maker.
There's a lot less now.
I'm sure someone can do it. Well, fair, but there's a lot of names on the poster, and it reminds me of several years back when Marvel was developing a film of the Inhumans that then got kind of demoted to a one-off miniseries that aired on ABC that was then not good and quickly forgotten. And it makes me wonder if maybe the Eternals would have been better as a different type of project. Maybe it would have served better as a series. I don't know, because it just wasn't a lot of excitement in it for me. In fact, when it ended, I was surprised that it was ending, because the final battle seemed very much not huge, like a big deal, like usual.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
and then it just kind of ends on a kind of a lackluster cliffhanger in a way, where this, spoiler alert, this big bad is like, well, I guess if you have a good time on this planet, I'll judge it later. So bye, and then it ends.
It has a kind of a Mortal Kombat. It has a Mortal Kombat where the big guy. Can you please? Hey, please, can you?
He has a lot to say.
Guy,
I mean, the most exciting part of the movie to me was the killer post-credit scenes. The mid-credit scene and the post-credit scene were awesome, and they were better than most of the movie.
Yeah, I don't. I hear the thing about too many characters. I don't think there was. I think it worked out for me because they didn't
That's fine.
Because I think what they did was they branched them off in groups a lot of the time. They weren't.
That did help.
There were very few times where they were all together. But I think that there was. I think if I had to point at a few problems I had, because I don't think it's necessarily a bad film. I just think it didn't.
Right.
I don't know. It just didn't rise to certain expectations, which normally I try to walk in with low expectations anyway.
Right.
But I think there was a little too much grandiose going on at times. There was a little too much of people all standing and preening, and trying to look like they were great. I feel like there was a lot of things that there's a lot of fat that could have trimmed. I honestly think that for me, one of the biggest distractions and one of the biggest turnoffs was just the design of the deviants. These monsters that they're fighting, they just kind of didn't register as anything. They just look like weird green blob monsters in a lot of ways. So I was just watching and just being like, this threat doesn't, and the big threat was that these things eat people. It wasn't like that they necessarily, they didn't seem like that big a threat, the deviants. And so when they eradicated them in 500 1500 BC or AD or whatever, you're thinking to yourself oh, all right. I don't know. It just I felt like this movie is meant to answer a lot of questions going all the way through the MCU, all the way through history. And I love the idea of seeing them kind of moving through history. But I feel like they could have focused on that a bit more, on the sort of evolution of these characters through time, as opposed to just constantly flipping back and forth between present day and the specific moment we need to reference for the movie. You know what I mean? It was like they'd have a fight and then they'd reference the exact moment that they need to reference, and then they do their scene for a while, and then they go back to 500 BC, and they go back to this, back to that. So I don't know. It wasn't. I did, like you said, I dug the post-credit scenes. I feel like I knew about Harry Styles being rumored for something, but then he showed up and I was like, that's Harry Styles. And I was like,
I didn't. I gasped because Harry Styles is a big deal in the world of pop culture, and kind of a fledgling actor. He was in Dunkirk, and I think he's done a couple other small things. But to bring Harry Styles into the MCU is a choice, a big choice, because you don't bring in someone of that caliber if he's not going to play a significant part of the future. So that what?
Sorry, no, go ahead.
I was going to say that choice alone brings in a level of excitement, because you're like, okay, so he's going to be an important part of the overall story going forward. He plays Thanos' brother, his clearly younger, much more handsome brother.
Jerry.
Yeah, there was
Jerry
Thanos.
Comic, from terms of the comics, I don't really know how they're going to adapt this for the movies, but
and then his Harry Styles' little friend was voiced by Patton Oswalt.
I know. When I heard him at first, I was like, it sounds like Patton Oswalt. And then kept going. I was like, but maybe it's not Patton Oswalt. Yeah. And then when it finally, so Patton Oswalt is playing a character called Pip the Troll, and there was a lot of rumors pre-Endgame that Peter Dinklage was playing Pip the Troll, and that went the other way. He played somebody else. He played a big dwarf.
Right.
There's Thanos in the comics is an Eternal with a deviant gene. That's part of his thing in the comics. But it'd be interesting to see how they spin that, because they kind of made it sound like the planet Thanos was on they didn't make it sound like Thanos was an Eternal, but maybe he was, and that was his weird plan. He was like, got to save this. Maybe he was trying to prevent more Celestials by cutting the populations in half.
Yeah.
Because they did that. So my other thing is, this movie's super standalone. Like, other than casual references to things, I feel like you could watch this and not really feel like you were getting a lot of other movies spoiled for you. They mentioned that Thanos' snap gave the world more time, gave Earth more time before this emergence. But other than that, I don't feel like you'd feel like you missed much if you came in on this. Like Garrett said, I think this movie will probably have more significance in the future, because if you watch, everything that they've done, you watch WandaVision, you watch Falcon and Winter Soldier, you watch Loki, and even like the post-credit scenes in Shang-Chi, they are setting up clearly some big global, like not global, like cosmic thing, like bigger than potentially even Infinity War. And so this ending here, this sort of cliffhanger ending, I think is going to have big ramifications in the future. So I don't know where, there may not be an Eternals 2, but where these characters pop up again, they will pop up, right? Because Marvel's always been sure of one thing. We may not necessarily get a second movie, but we've introduced the character, so we can keep going with that.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I could see it going either way in terms of an Eternals 2 versus just pulling them into other movies. I think either one could work. And hopefully, with them establishing the characters, because even if there is an Eternals 2, I would guess that these characters will show up in other movies before that comes out. And so hopefully laying that groundwork would make an Eternals 2 a little more appealing. Because I feel like I walked out of that movie like not really feeling attached to any particular characters.
Yeah.
Like I typically do at a Marvel movie. And just feeling kind of, it's almost hard. It's hard because I agree with what you said, David. It's not a bad movie, but it is like, well, that happened, I guess.
Yeah. I'm going to have to pray on this,
Yeah. Do a little reflecting, journal about it.
Because like I said, like I said, 5 Marvel movies from now, we may look back and go like, man, we didn't realize all the stuff that they were really setting up here. I appreciate.
I hope so.
I appreciate that Chloe Zhao, sorry, is that how you say her name?
Yeah, Chloe Zhao.
Zhao.
Yeah. And Marvel, they took the opportunity here. This is why there was some backlash to this movie to forward some diverse ideas. You got a very diverse cast, and you got LGBT representation, and I think done very tastefully. Yeah. And you got a character in Sprite who is this sort of very conflicted character that is either sees themselves as a girl, although I'm not really sure we're going to try or not. But you also got a deaf character for the first time as well. So I think that there was a lot of effort going in to make this a very unique Marvel movie. Mm-hmm. And it was, every now and then you take an experiment. It is strange to me that critically this is performing the way it is, because you would think that that's the kind of thing that critics have been saying Marvel should do for years, is something more thoughtful and less punchy.
Yeah, and I think that's why a lot of the critique is that it is ambitious. It just doesn't really work. Mm-hmm. Praising the ambition behind it, but wishing it had come together a little better. Because there are a lot of interesting characters in there.
And I do think it is interesting to note how audiences overall are reacting to this compared to critics, because it is a much more positive reception. I'm trying to find the score, but I can't, at least right off the top of my head. But I think that for me, again, I have, it's a 46-80 difference. 46 on the 80 on the audience score. And I think that it is because there is such diversity in the storytelling and the casting and how they handle it. And so I am very intrigued by the dynamic, because I am on a upwards trajectory as I think about it more. I'd like to see it again, just to kind of, re-experience it. But yeah, it doesn't necessarily, it's going to be interesting to see how they tie everything back in, because right now we don't have a story. Remember, before we had a big giant MCU, we just had a bunch of standalone movies, right? And so now we are so used to wondering, how does this tie in? How is it going to work? And we know they're going to, but perhaps this movie is doing what it's meant to do as a storytelling mover, right? We as audience members have no idea what's coming. We have a lot of different little things that they are setting up, but we don't know where it's going. And so I think a lot of what we are doing is assuming and taking our own projections onto it and trying to think like Marvel. And so I think that, again, the thing that I have also said is that I liked this movie, and it is a good movie, but there was something that didn't connect. And part of me wonders if it is because that is an intentional storytelling piece that they just have to handle right now in order to tell the bigger story that they're telling. What a lot of people leave, things like Dune or the Lord of the Rings trilogies, because they are not finished movies either. And so those are not standalone movies. They are telling a bigger story. So I think that there is potential that really is the case with this. We'll only know down the line, but I think that it's important to remember that Marvel does tell a bigger story. And right now, we as audience members have nothing. Right now, they're setting up a new story, so we don't know where it's going.
Yeah, I think that the issue for critics is that the movie should be able to do both. It should be able to be an enjoyable movie on its own.
Yeah, because
but I argue that it was, because most people seem to be enjoying it.
Yeah, the audience score is much higher than the critic score, and that, I don't know. It's kind of curious because, it's an interesting idea, but I also, it's hard to say because Marvel's been able to pull it off before. I mean, you even look at Shang-Chi. That was a blast of a movie. Whether they were if they never made Shang-Chi 2, Shang-Chi 1 would still be a blast, Whereas, I don't know if they never make another Eternals movie and the Eternals never show up again. We'll all just look at it and go, what a weird movie they did that one time.
Yeah.
I do agree. It does have potential to become very Inhumans-y in the lore. But I am optimistic, I think, is where I fall.
I didn't think it was a bit. I did think it was a bit overlong. I feel like it's funny to think too, because like it was just going and going, and I thought to myself, like it didn't feel like it was necessarily 2.5 hours in the moment, but when I pulled my phone out at the end of the movie, I went, "Oh, whoa!" Like the entire day's gone now. So I don't know
what you got. Anything else?
I don't got anything.
I truly don't have anything else to add about the movie.
Please don't.
Pretty much my opinion's been said. So, and I agree with all y'all.
How much time we got left, Josh?
Not much. Well, we're on track.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Hang on. Talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah.
I think that it is, we've got what is coming up next. I can't remember. Is it Spider-Man is the next one?
Spider-Man is the next one.
I really do. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. I really do think that with them breaking up, at the end, they will definitely pop up in more movies. I also wonder what they're going to do with Sprite, because she is mortal now and theoretically doesn't have her powers. So is she even helpful in any way, shape, or form? I also wonder, these Eternals and the Deviants, they were built with a purpose from these bigger Celestials that are growing in the planets, right? Their whole purpose is to fight with each other and stir chaos and cause tension on the planets, thus building the energy needed to create these beings to eventually destroy the planet and whatnot, right? They learn that they're built on purpose for this purpose. So my question is, they have been told that their life, they can't intervene unless a deviant is involved. And so I guess my main question is, do we think that their godlike powers are for everything, or is it specifically for the reason that they are built? Because then again, you set it up like a Superman situation where why do you even need the Avengers if these godlike things are here who can just take care of everything so easily?
I think it's just, it's like a religious code, more or less. It's just they're forbidden, and they can recognize when the situation doesn't call for their actions, and you can tell that for them, it's a struggle.
Right. But that's what I'm saying is eventually they've reached a point now where if something else comes up, they have a whole new different belief system because of how their thought process is. So the question I have is, do their godlike powers continue and they can just hurt everything and kill everything with ease? And do you even need the Avengers, or do they find out that their powers are deviant specific and that they are faced with the mortality that they didn't know?
I think they're probably keeps working. I don't know if you wouldn't need the Avengers so much. We get a reference where Kingo says that he knows Thor. He met Thor before, so I think, certain Avengers you're always going to need, and just because, and really, I mean, some of their strongest already got taken out. So we didn't talk about some of the, we'll have to do we need to do like a second part of this where we can talk about Gilgamesh, my favorite. Anyhow, sorry, we're all dying over here.
Sounds pitiful.
Yeah. So I don't know. I was trying to think of one other thing to mention. I can't think of anything.
Well, let's mention the box office.
Yeah, let's move forward then.
Eternals opened to I think, let me make sure this is right. Yes, $71 million in its opening weekend, and which is pretty good. Was going up against Dune and Venom, things like that. In its second weekend, this weekend here, it brought in 27 million. So just a little under 50%, or a little over 50% drop. And Clifford the Big Red Dog slumped in there to that second spot.
Love that.
It has been the movies that have managed to win during the pandemic have been the big franchise films. Your top movies for the year are Shang-Chi, Eternals, Quiet Place 2, Dune as well, Venom. So it's been a big year for the franchise. The franchises are keeping the box office going. I was showing Josh that we in terms of the year, we are better at this point this year than all of 2020. We're over $1 billion at the box office, better than we are at fall of 2020. So on an average year in the past, the box office was averaging about 10 to 11 billion dollars collectively, all movies collectively, about 11 billion a year. In 2020, it went down to 2 billion. 2 billion. So that's a massive drop. This year, we're probably going to round out with either somewhere between 3.8 billion and 4 billion. That's a rebound. I wouldn't say a massive rebound, but a rebound. It'd be very interesting to see if next year we're looking a little healthier. Maybe we can get it. Maybe we can get it up there into the 8-9 region. So
be cool. It's going to be a long process for the box office to fully recover from the pandemic. Of course, we got to keep getting the COVID under control.
That's true.
And you know how to do that. That's all I'll say.
That's true.
Okay. Well, letterbox game. Then let's see how the letterbox community has scored this movie. Who is running the game this week? I believe Andrew did it last time.
I think David won.
I think I won. Yes, David did. Yeah, that makes that. Yeah.
I will get up here real quick. Sorry.
Oh, hello.
Sorry about that. All right. I may lose camera function for a minute here.
All right. Our poor YouTube audience.
Your guess is ready.
Okay.
I am ready when you are. So here we are. This is the letterbox game. We go to our favorite site, letterbox, and we all take turns, except for me, guessing the score on letterbox. It is a 1 to 5 scale. Who wants to go first?
I would go with 2.8.
A 2.8, yes, from Andrew.
Low one. Lowy.
I'm going to go with 3.1.
I'm going to go a little bit higher. I got a 3.3.
3.3 from Garrett.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I can say with all confidence that this time the winner is Garrett, as the current score on Letterboxd as of the second weekend is a 3.4. I just closed the app, so I don't have the reviews, but I did look at one, and it called the movie Frictionless, which is an interesting way of looking at it.
You know, that movie did seem very smooth. It glided very well. It didn't have, and I think that goes with, with a Marvel movie, you kind of expect a lot of herky-jerky explosions, fighting, action, and everything was very, again, elegant and epic and pretty. And again, I think you get that. That's, I think, why it adds to that DC feeling that also feels like the things that they do in like Justice League and stuff. The way that it was shot reminded me of how those DC movies are shot.
And the one major conflict really doesn't it kind of comes along as little surprise, and there's like no pomp to it, who thinks that the good looking white guy is going to turn out to be evil?
Yeah, that was pretty stunning.
No, I'm actually quite shocked because, Garrett, I didn't want to bring this up because you have this conversation all the time about trailers and how trailers are so misleading. You don't want to watch them anymore. I was convinced the bad guy of this movie was Angelina Jolie in love with a deviant. Mm-hmm. The trailers, that's the story they sold me on. And that didn't happen. In fact, that talking deviant was barely in the movie.
Yeah.
Right.
But Gilgamesh, love that dude. Train to Busan, get that guy in more movies.
Yeah, he was great. All right. Well, let's wrap up here. What are our scores for the movie? I will start by giving it I think I'm going to be generous with a 3.
I settle with 3.
I'm going to be a little extra generous. I'm going to give it a 3.5.
I also will give it a 3.
Well, then that's like a 3.25.
Yeah, which is pretty right on.
That's pretty close to what Letterboxd said. Okay, well, thanks for joining us for this discussion of Marvel's Eternals. Hopefully you have seen that. I was going to say go see the movie if you haven't, but we kind of spoiled it for you.
Yeah, definitely
which is just common if you listen to movie podcasts. I don't know why I feel the need to say it, but watch the movie first. We'll be back next week with another episode for you. We're getting close to doing our Christmas annual Christmas series, so get excited for that. Otherwise, you can find us online at somanysequels.com. We've got all of our links there, so you can subscribe in the podcast app of your choice or the videos on YouTube. So we'll see you next time. Bye.